Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Plus3 Futures and Commodities show. We are recording on Friday, the 6th of December, about an hour and a half before the close. And the theme this week is, what do you do when you get a tiger by the tail? My name's Ben Maldonado. As always, I'm here with my partner, Barry Hederachi. Barry, how we doing?
Doing doing pretty good. Doing pretty
How,
good.
how's that tiger treating you?
Still got him by the tail, so
And as long as you got 10 fingers and two hands,
still riding it. Still
You're
riding
in
it.
you're in good
Uh,
shape. So here's
yeah.
here's the tiger that is the S&P. Let's dive in and see what's going on and what's the most probable thing we think is going to happen.
So last week we left off the cash chart SPX here, what we're looking at, with 60-20 being the key level to watch. And I
Hmm.
even had a little buffer on top of it. Like this area, if forget a false break. Remember, we had a big high coming early November, right through here. And
Hmm.
we had a decent reaction, went down to 58.48. Then on the way back, we were looking, if this high was a good high, we were looking for some kind of a lower high to give us a signal of weakness or, the timing is right for the market to go down, which it didn't. And then we spent a couple, 3 days right at the highs, kind of flirting with 60-20 level, which was pretty decent resistance, but not amazing because I remember talking about the 360 as well back in the
Hmm.
day, saying, oh, it would be amazing if we can get up to 360. So now 360 is obviously it's a huge cycle coming up from October of 2022. And now that we're clearly above 60-20, I mean, this week basically we did that. We hopped on top,
Hmm.
sat on the zone for a couple of days, and just very well above it. So what do we do now? I think, well, long as we're above 60-20, we go back to buy the dip. I think that's what we have to do. And
Hmm.
as far as the cash goes, let's look at the next level. I mean, next level that we have to deal with is really 360, up from the October lows, and that ends up becoming 63.84. Now, there are a couple of levels before we get there, but daily in the big picture, that's what we have. We have
Hmm.
360 degrees up. Really, that's the big deal. That's really the big thing to deal with. And before that, we had the 270, which is three-quarters of the square.
Hmm.
And same kind of thing happened. We bumped up against it, had a sort of a decent correction, came back up. We were looking to see if that was a lower high. Sure, we got a little bit of a correction off of that. Then on the third test, we hopped on top of it. And
Hmm.
after that, you can see how we held above, actually making higher lows, and we clearly moved higher. And the 50% is an important level, but it's not as important as the full square. Nonetheless, we had a lot of other things come up here, so it was good resistance. And obviously, because market did turn down like on a dime first time we met that level.
Hmm.
So so now that we're above it, well, this is the idea of tiger by the tail, right? Now that we're on, let's go until the tiger gets tired. I guess that's
Until we get below 60-20 again.
or I mean, there's two things that can happen. I mean, there are a couple of other levels above this. We'll look at those. So two things. One, yeah, of course, right now 60-20 is a level to really watch on the cash chart basis the daily, right?
Hmm.
Not 30 minutes or anything, basis the daily. And on the upside, we have 63.90, I think, is really the level. So that's what we have. The market looks fairly strong. I mean, we had a good cycle come through here back in July, which, NASDAQ responded really well to that. Then we had a really good cycle here. And between early November and early July, if you guys can see how this is the main line, right? The main line was 56.60, which is the 270-degree level. You can see what really happened here. The flip happened in September, right? Before that, we were below it, we were bumping up against it. Then all of a sudden in September, we jumped on top. And after that, you can see clearly we stayed about 56.73
Hmm.
and, made our way higher, making higher lows. The only thing is when we get to these critical levels, which would be the 50% and also a full square, we have to watch it a little bit, which we did very closely. And now that we're on top, well, let her rip, let's see what happens
Mm-hmm.
on the other side.
Mm-hmm.
So that's for the cash chart. We have the level. I mean, not a lot of level really for the SPX. It's just the 60/20. Now, yeah, let's stay with the theme. I want to look at the Dow, but let's jump. I know you're going to cover the NASDAQ.
Yep.
So let's go and take a look at the ES.
That's the December contract.
Yeah, it is. Hold on. I might jump around a bit to get my bearings here. Okay. All right. So it basically we're coming off the same low, same square. Now we're working off of the same October low, October 2022 down here. And you can see 360 up is right around 63, push it 63.90. Let's go with that. And 63.90 becomes our new level of resistance. Not only that, kind of the attractor, when it's 360, there's really a strong pull to that. We'll see what stands in the way on the way there, but clearly now that we cleared got on top of the 50% of the square, which was 60.26. Yeah, well, let's just go. There's not much more to say about that.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at it from a couple of other levels, if you go from this was the level, one of the levels we used earlier, once when this low came in, I was really going off that first low. And the
Mm-hmm.
second was I was treating it sort of a phantom low. And if you look, which is a very effective low, by the way, if you really look at the chart. So if you look at that, we just got to the 50% level. So we have to
Yep.
watch that. There's always a couple of things to watch, even though the trend is up. You always want to, make sure your headlights are on. You can see
Yeah.
far enough down the road. So here, obviously, we see 50% of that square is right around 60.96 fair and square. So 50.96 is there. 60.96, sorry.
Mm-hmm.
And we haven't quite got above it, but all right, let's just go with it. The reason I like this setting is you can see the last high came in right on the square and the low before that.
And you tested it a couple times from
Yeah,
above.
yep, correction. So this area it's really worked out well. And if you take the last sort of the big low coming off of that, this is other thing I want to talk about. And we could have done it on the cash chart, but I have the thing here. We have
Mm-hmm.
90 days from the August low coming up in a couple of days, which is
Yep.
coming up into December 11th, 10th, 11th, right?
Next week. Yeah.
Next week. So that's 90, 135. If we somehow get up into this 62 is really the square,
Mm-hmm.
6,200. So 90 by 135 by 90. But 90s you always want to watch no matter how we're doing. And that's clearly in the works. And going back to the low that I was looking at. So we have 50% from here. We have a 90 with price a little above that. But when markets are never all perfectly lined up, everybody pointing to a higher or low, usually it's a little bit of mix of this, a little bit of that. And you have to, I mean, the part of the work is to see what you can derive from the data, right? What the pattern information and say, okay, which way do we trade? So
Mm-hmm.
here, clearly, because it's very strong until we get some other evidence, and we'll look at that in a second. We have to stay with the long side, but here, just remember, 60.96, we have some resistance. Cash got above it, and if we go to the sort of the false break low, we are clearly above 50%. So when it's like that, when you have two lows that have worked in the past, you really have to look for a third option to settle the situation, right?
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, early you just get stuck in paralysis, and we don't have to do that. We have lots of good tools. And here's the December chart, and this is a square 72, and we were looking at this because it was a possible square 108 by 72 coming in here, and we did get a reaction off of that, and again, just to see what would happen at that. But we moved up above that without any problem whatsoever, so that's fine. And if you put the 90 square of 90 on there, we have quarter of a square. We got above that. We're sitting on top of it. and here's that 90 that we saw on the other chart. So we have a timing cycle coming up, and it's not a huge low. It's just where this leg started. And sometimes, not sometimes, where the leg starts is where the timing should be, should be counted from. So from here,
Sure.
we have 90, and we have to just keep that in mind.
There was
And then
some emotion around that August low because that was the sort of yen carry trade unwind thing. So it's probably
yeah,
a good
hmm
spot.
we were a little bit on the 60 back then because I remember the 60 coming in.
Hmm.
And but yeah, not much. I think what we need for now is really what we're working with. So let's see how that works out. It's not like we don't have levels and we can't really measure trend, So everything's
Hmm.
okay. It's just we need to know we just need to remember where these levels are. So we have a 90 coming up early next week, and then the price on this December chart 60.73. We really want to watch for the next few days. Because if we get under that, right around, plus or minus 1 day from the 10th, that could be squaring. It's not one of these huge things that we've seen in the past. It's a minus square, but nonetheless, it'd be good to watch it.
Hmm.
And that's really it. We can look at the weekly for a second just to kind of get our bearings, remember where we are, kind of like the old, how did we get here? So here's the circle
That.
chart that we've been looking at.
Hmm.
And here is the 144 by 108, 108 by 108 by 144 we were watching. Then we thought, maybe it'll go push a little higher. And of course, there's a huge ABCD that would be classic. And what happened was, wouldn't you believe it? Of course, we go up and tap it, right? So
Yeah.
look at that. And remember that little buffer zone I drew up a
Yeah.
couple of
Yeah.
weeks back?
We're right there.
I didn't think we would quite get there, but hey, you never know. So,
Hmm.
the lower part of that looks to be like 61.30, and the upper portion of that looks to be about 61.60. Let's say it's a 30-point zone there.
Hmm.
But we're very close to the Gartley, not the Gartley, but the ABCD, which looks about like 61.16.
Hmm.
So the high this week was
61.13 and or 11, something like that.
mhm. So anyway, that's what we're dealing with. That's so as far as the circle goes, as far as the squares go, as far as the square goes, we kind of blew through it. We had plus or minus 1 day to deal with whatever we had to deal with. And clearly the reaction right there, here, I'll put the circle on it, held above the 144.
Hmm.
And the timing, yeah, I was stuck a little bit here. You can see how the pause was there, but it wasn't really a reaction, as in a huge counter trend sell off. There were some tiny timing points big enough to notice because that early where it came in pretty strong, and we thought there might be more to go. But now we're kind of still going vertical as far as the weekly goes. So let's see how much further. If this ABCD is still in the way, and I think this 61.30 area we really need to watch next week. If we go up, remember this geometric, this line that I put in
Hmm.
there? We
Tapping it.
actually touch it today, right?
Yeah, tapping it right
I
there.
swear, when I drew that in, I'm like, well, it's a long shot, but that would be an ideal place for it to finish up its
Hmm.
round. And I thought we would hit that like early November, like November 3rd, right?
Hmm.
But what we did is we got very close to it, very close, and then we corrected, paused a little bit, consolidated. Now is the second shot, and clearly we tapped the line. We'll see how it works. Anyway, either way, we have a little bit of a situation that we came up into. Again, it's this, we're not trying to sell this or anything. We're just looking ahead to see what kind of obstacles are in the way. So far, it's just blowing through things, and that's fine. And if we get, I was going to say, the buildup was that if we get through this ABCD and this little zone here, basically, if we can settle above 61.30, it could be a hell of a Christmas rally,
Hmm.
for whatever reason. Now, there's a caveat here, so let me get to that in a second. So that's the weekly.
Hmm.
Um, Let me go to our 30-minute. So here's our 30-minute chart. Last week we left off with 60.84 being the upside, and if we can hold above 60.37. So that was back here, and you can see how we held above 60.37, really
Hmm.
well above it. and grinding our way up. Took a little bit of a fight, fine, but a couple hours is no big fight. And then
Mm-hmm.
we got this is a great example of getting above, holding above kind of a situation, right? On the lower time frame, fine, but nonetheless we did it, in textbook style. So this 50% line is what we're focusing on. You can see how he broke above it. Really, you can see how he even sat above the zone, for entire cycle, came back down, just sort of straddled the 6084 the next cycle, and then we moved higher. And so today was the deal, right? We went up 5/8 of the square, came back a little bit, very tight, held pretty much above the zone, in the zone, above the zone, very
Mm-hmm.
healthy, looks
Mm-hmm.
good. All right. And so my comments this morning was, we post everything on X every day in the morning, usually before the market, 90% of the time, unless you're
Mm-hmm.
moving homes or leaving the country or on vacation, right? Then it
Or
gets a little
both.
late, or
Right.
both. Then it's a little late.
Right.
But anyway, so the idea now is that now that we're above 6084, it's in a good position. There's no talking around that. And the next target is 6128, which is a good one. If remember that 6130 we picked up from the daily chart.
Yep.
So here we have 6128. It's pretty decent level. And then the next full square is around 6176. So that's what we have there. We'll see how we do. I'll have to leave it with this. Long as we're above 6084, market's in a really good place. It's in a good place. Now, on the same level of importance would be if we somehow break down below 6084 and somehow can't get above and start getting weak. So really watch this. And when we talk about this line being important, it's both ways, not just
Mm-hmm.
it's above it, it's strong and it's going to continue to go. We treat this more or less like a fuse line, not exactly, but more or less. So here you really want to watch the upside, which is fine. I think it's fine till we get to 6128. So upside is clear till then, which gives you plenty of room to trade, especially a 30-minute level. And if we get below 6084, watch out, because we really want to watch to see if we can hold, at least 6062. 62 to 84 is the zone we should really kind of hold and get moving higher if we're going to go higher. Otherwise, it's going to get a little messy. And because of the timing, two or three timing things we talked about, plus we have a rebel yell cycle.
Mm-hmm.
Now the rebel yell has a little bit leeway to hit. It doesn't have to hit exactly at the beginning of the cycle. So we'll talk
Mm-hmm.
about that as we need to. But now we want to watch these levels, because that's what's going to tell us where the weight of the market is. So 62 to 84 is sort of the holding zone, and we really don't want to get stuck below this. Then it would really take for the market to test these support levels and then come back. Then we have to get back above 84 again. So it's a bit of a chore, right? Market doesn't like to really do that unless it's forced to. Sort of like what happened here back in the middle of November. We came up to these highs, and once we got below, we were stuck there for a whole week or two, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we don't want to get into that. We just want a clean market. Otherwise, it looks fairly good up until about 6176. So there, you guys know the numbers to watch. Anything you want to add to that, Ben?
Just my daily half square is at 6110, which we tapped today. So in
Mm-hmm,
that area,
mm-hmm.
that's the area that we got to get above for my daily.
Yeah, and here it's 5/8 of the square, which is a good level. So let's see
Mm-hmm.
what happens
Yep.
there. Let's go back to the normal. Take a look at bonds, I guess.
They're rallying.
Well, let me see. Oh, here's the weekly futures chart. We didn't take a look at this in a while. And here's, I was looking at the cash chart from the '09 lows, and you can see, we're almost to the, like we saw earlier, we have ABCD and we have the 360 up here.
Mm-hmm.
Now this 360 is from '09 low, and that 360 comes up to 64.31. Okay, just to keep
Hmm.
in mind how we're, never know where these things end up. So we have to keep that in mind, and that's a really good area, a very strong area, and so we'll see how it goes. But anyway, that's definitely an area we want to watch. Now, this ABCD is also really important. By the time we touch it, so try to catch the midweek show, or we'll do maybe an early midweek show and try to post it on Tuesday night. That'll give us a little bit of extra time to see if we tap it. If we tap it, we'll talk about it because we'll talk about it if there's anything else of importance that we see, by the time we touch it, right?
Okay.
And here's the weekly futures, pretty much the same story. There's the ABC.
It's interesting that these big ABCDs are showing up.
Yeah, they're showing up, and we do have some timing. So we're really kind of waiting to see what happens next. It's really the thing here. And if the ABCD blows through, which that can happen, that's when I've already prepared a little zone up here,
Yeah,
which is
that's when your 6,400 targets come in.
So
Yeah.
that's a big one too. If we're really going to
Hmm.
go for it, might as well just the market has a habit of doing that, just pushing through everything till everybody sort of gets so bullish they get giddy, right? So I think
Hmm.
would be a giddyish kind of level. Right now, everybody's still, I don't know. I know the sentiment's kind of tilted bullish now, but that sentiment can hang around for a while. So,
Sure.
yep. All right. Let's move on to bonds.
Hmm. Bonds were grinding higher this week.
Grinding higher after this square. We had this
Hmm.
45 by 45 here, and we were looking for some kind of a reaction. 19 was our first sort of level. If the bonds were really weak, we'd have stopped there. Next level is really the 50% square. It'd be 122. That would be, with the most reasonable place. 50% pullbacks are, perfect bear markets. So I'm really watching that to see if we get to 122 and how we react there. So till then, looks like the square is in place and we're moving higher. We talked about this as the square was coming in, so we kind of called that low out in real time. We're actually a little bit ahead of real time.
Hmm.
So that's that. Let's look at the weekly. So weekly bonds, again, we were looking for some kind of a pullback on the daily, and now we are, we held held right about 114, which was really kind of low we want to get to if there's a big turnaround and so on. So for now, we know we broke through this trend line, a really important trend line. This is coming from the 20, late 23 lows.
Hmm.
First time we took a dive in there, right? Then we did an ABCD up, and here's our first sort of visit down, let's say. And we were looking for 114 area to hold. We held a little bit above it, showing a little bit of strength. And now and you can see how these trend lines I've drawn, we had all these triangles that were breaking on the way down, and these trend lines. You can see here's one how we come back and kiss it and then drop, right? Bonds have a habit
Hmm.
of doing that. So here's one we broke through, came back and kissed it and down again. So here we broke down, came back, and I don't know if you're going to kiss it or get above it, but we're right
Hmm.
there. So just something to notice. But I think we need to let this work itself out. We have 2 weeks up. So anyway, let's see how that works out. For
And
now,
if you look from last October, we're really sideways. And you
oh
could
yeah, I mean,
even go
man,
for since the 22 low, it's basically sideways.
yeah, we've been in the this part of the square most of the time.
That half square, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, especially the last year. So there's room to move, but we're really watching this trend line to see, are we going to push through and then tip over? So we'll see. What happens there. And that's the weekly. Here's crude.
Talk about sideways.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. Sideways, which we kind of called out. If as long as it's
Hmm.
between 64.75 and 73.50, not much to do. We were kind of triangulating. Now that's blown out.
It's looking
But
kind of heavy, isn't it?
it's looking kind of heavy, and which is good. I've been talking about, this is how we got this zone down here, and that's how I don't know, about a month or two ago, maybe a couple of months ago, um, we came up to 61, 61, thinking, if we can get down here, that'll flush out the September lows and also the lows back in 23. And also we did a pretty good move, 60-degree move down to this line, down to the 60-degree level. And from here, I was expecting, that's when I drew this. Okay, now I remember, drew the zone out. It
Mm-hmm.
would be really good to have a flush before we move higher. I mean, just like we did here.
Mm-hmm.
And so if we can get down to that level, I mean, the exact low is not that far. If we get to 63, would have done it. But anywhere in this zone would be great. So it looks like we're heading that way. So far, not much. And I'll tell you why we're looking for that. And that's in the weekly with chart with that big circle. So let's jump to the weekly really quick. So far, not much to do here. I mean, you can probably day trade this, but other than that, no big
No
trend
real
here.
trend.
No
No.
real trend unless you're writing your options against it.
Mm-hmm.
Then it's probably a good time. So this is the chart. This is why I wanted to talk about it. So we have a pretty good arc here, and we're starting to break down. And at the time when we first talked about it, probably before August, probably in July, we talked about it because we're getting close. The idea was we're going to tap this and then run up along the curve, and that would give us the start of the crude move, to the
Mm-hmm.
upside.
Mm-hmm.
And then we talked about, well, if that doesn't happen, then the 6460 level sets up a perfect place for a false break and then move higher. And we also talked about how up until we really break this trend line, kind of like we do in some of the commodities, then these long trend lines, and this is a huge downtrend. Um, there's not much to do. I mean, yeah, we can trade the move up into the double, but not much. And if you put two and two together and looking at how it's played out so far, we have this sort of descending triangle, and it would make sense for it to do a false break to the downside and then whip around. And I think that's probably the scenario. So we're just waiting to see see where the evidence is. That's kind of
Mm-hmm.
my take on crude, and I'm waiting to trade it. There's a lot of things connected to energy. I think is going to be huge in the coming years, months for sure, and coming few years. So really watching this close. And to me, it makes sense that we do some kind of a false break before we get started. Well, it's obvious because we didn't ride the curve up, which means it's the other way, right? It's the other scenario, which would be go down and make a false break and come back up. So that's my take on that. Anything you want to add to the crude?
Just, keep watching it even though it's sideways, because when it goes, it's gonna go fast.
Yeah, exactly. And we know what we're looking for. We're looking for some kind of a false break. So we're not looking for any lows here. Every week we're not looking to buy it. We're waiting for this
No.
to come back and really clear out these lows. And I don't think we're going to clear this low, but these lows here
Yeah.
and whip around. I think it'll be great. It's going to be worth the wait. We'll deal with it when we get there. But now, not much there. That's not where the action is. So,
No, not yet.
and not yet. And so, kind of in sideways mode. And speaking of sideways, gold in a kind of a rare week is also kind of sideways triangulating now.
Triangulating. Yep.
Which is, overall it's bullish.
Yeah.
Um, but we really need to get above this 2671 to be in a strong position. So we'll just go with that, what happens. But now that's a short-term view. We have a triangle. We're waiting to, till up until it gets about 2671. I would consider gold to be kind of on soft ground,
Hmm.
you have to be careful with that.
It's
Here's
digesting that. It's digesting that big move.
Yeah, I mean, what a move.
Hmm.
Which we were bullish all the way up until the high came in.
Yep. When it's squared. Yep.
It squared, it hit our target, which was 2797. Beautiful, beautiful. Everything worked out perfectly. And
Hmm.
what we do have is a lower high here. So I'm kind of watching that because inside week this week. So you guys really want to watch next week to see if we take out the lows this week or the highs this week. So that might be some action there to be traded if you're trading short-term gold. And
Hmm.
if we take the low out, there might be an ABCD setting up. So something else to watch. Also, we have that triangle working, all of that. The low really didn't square out. If you go back to the daily, you'll see how the low didn't quite Well, actually, didn't square out, but we did do a measured move down, right? 60
Yeah, full
degrees down.
square. Yep.
Full square move, but it wasn't really a square. So I think after, well, I know the point I was trying to make was not that we didn't square, and not that we didn't make a measured move, but the fact that after a huge move like this, over 240 days, you would want the the counter trend to square out. That would be nice.
Hmm.
So in order to do that, I think we need a little bit more for that to happen. So that's on one side. Second way to look at this is, gold is just making a pause. It's in great position. This low came in perfectly right at the 180-degree line. So it's doing great, and it's probably going to continue, but we would like to see it trade above this 50% of the square before we get involved. Because we're kind of, as you guys can tell, we're kind of momentum traders. So that's why we wait for certain levels to get taken out
Hmm.
versus buy the dip, as it's coming down. We don't do that. If anything, we wait, make sure the highs or lows are flush against one of the square levels, like here or here. So here we're kind of in the middle, and you can see we're crisscrossing the 50% level. So
Hmm.
not much to do there.
The dreaded triangle.
But they're good when they break out, but you got to be extra careful, right? I
Yeah, you
mean,
got to wait.
they're fun to trade, but you got to be patient. Copper, well, copper did the ABCD, and when it came back down a little bit towards the square line, we were wondering if it's going to break this, and if it broke, how negative that's going to look. But luckily, it didn't. We're holding well above the square, and the square level was 405. It's holding well above it. So I think as long as we're holding above that, I would consider this to be sort of a bullish consolidation, and we have a higher low.
Hmm.
So we'll see how that works out. It hasn't quite taken out the trend line, but it's okay. It's bullish. Is it really picking up a whole bunch of momentum and trending yet? No, but it's bullish.
Yes,
And
I agree.
and wasn't there like a whole thing research about the market's trend is 15-20% of the time, and the
Hmm.
rest of the time consolidating. They're consolidating.
Yeah, I
And
do
so this
think
is
there's some studies like that.
mhm. And so this is one of them for copper for sure. So we had a little run. Now we're consolidating, and you can see there's a triangle starting to form. And if it actually does form, let's say we get above the 144 and start putting in a good triangle. I mean, that could be very bullish moving forward. And I think it will, but it'll be next year sometime. I think the
Hmm.
metals are going to be strong again, including copper, silver, gold, everything, but probably not till probably the middle of the first quarter or so. So here we have a triangle. So the 144 level would be 422, and that's the level we're watching.
Okay.
All right. Nothing to add there, right? Pretty basic,
No, nope. Pretty
straight,
basic. Yep.
straightforward stuff.
Hmm.
Let's take a look at the dollar. And we did great with the dollar, eh? We called the lows,
Yeah.
called the highs. So if you guys are watching regularly, we called the high. We may actually called all the swings here,
Yeah.
but for now we got the you know late September lows, came up to the 107.25 level, which was a resistance we were watching, and then we were looking for some kind of a correction, which we got the correction. We held today right at the 1/3 of the square, which is pretty good. If we consolidate up here, which means the dollar is really, really strong.
Yeah.
50% level is still strong, but it's not very strong, right? It's 1/3, 2/3, 1/3 down is very strong. So let's see if we hold here, consolidate, and I'll tell you, because we have an ABCD finishing up at the sixth square. Usually that's a pretty good run. If we take this out, boy, dollar's really going to fly. So watch out. So this
Hmm.
level, this 107.25 level, to let's say 107.90 is really important.
Because I mean that breaks you out of the 2-year consolidation.
Man, and not, yeah, and it's really going to go. I mean, look, if
Hmm.
you look at the long-term charts, we should look at some of the monthly charts that you have maybe next week,
Sure.
maybe some of these long-term ones
Hmm.
in December before the next year starts.
Yeah, we could do that.
So anyway, dollar looks good, correction looks good. Let's see. Um, we're not ready to start buying it again. We want this to finish up, but so far this could be. So we watch for the next couple of days to see how that's working out. Let's take a quick look at the weekly. So weekly is
Battling at the half square.
battling out and great. Looks good. Why does it look good? Well, we broke out. We came back to check the line we broke out of, and then we traded higher this week. So I think that's pretty good. And we can
Yeah.
consolidate on top here. Obviously, the 50% level is right there. So basis the weekly is 106.20, let's say 106.20, and we closed at 106.04. So we want to get above that. So that 50% is really the level to watch, 106.20. Other than that, not much else to add. Ben, anything you want to mention on the dollar? Anything you're seeing?
Just that I think like you said before, it broke out. It's coming back to test the top of the triangle, and that's usually if we can have a successful test, that's a bullish launching spot usually.
Right. And that test is positive and we get about that 106.20 area, on a coming back towards the trend,
Hmm.
yeah, that would be very good. Good positive feedback, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, let's take a look at the euro, which has been getting just hammered. And there we go. Well, last week, I remember, I can't remember if it was the end of the week or the midweek, we talked about this 90.
Hmm.
And we more or less stopped there. We had 360. I was looking at this potential 90 by 360 coming in. Either way, um, I mean, that wouldn't be an amazing square, but okay, fine. But at least from the high to low, we did 45 days,
Hmm.
roughly, right? So we have that in place. So we were looking for a little bit of a bounce or a counter trend move, and we did get that in the form of a ABCD, but not a matching ABCD, but ABCD pattern. And the thing to do is a quarter of the square is a place. So 106.198 would be the quarter square. And if you're below that, this could be area of consolidation. And again, if we drop below, let's say 10, yeah, really keep it simple. If you drop below 104, then I think the euro has more to go to the downside. So it looks like,
Hmm.
the dollar kind of pulled back to a key level, euro pulled back to quarter of the square. So we'll see how it pans out. But for now, I mean, the trend is clearly still down and it just looks like a decent correction. But at the same time, we have support around 104. So let's see how this continues. Lower time frames, you guys can watch that. But I think long as the quarter square that we talked about is holding, short side might be the way. But if we're really consolidating in here, it could get a little choppy for a while, like currencies do most of the time. If you guys look back at the charts, not
But
much we can do about
it could also be bouncing up and checking those lows from like April and June, July, right
up in
in
here.
there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But that pretty much where the quarter square comes in. So yeah, it,
Hmm.
it checked that. So that's what so it might be done, right? I mean, as far as the counter trend
Yeah.
and ABCD are nice ways to look. Even though even if it's not a matching ABCD, just
Hmm.
the ABCDs, the two-wave patterns can tell you when the correction is done. So
Hmm.
let's take a look at the weekly. Weekly's doing okay. We have an inside week. We had the 50% level that held a couple of weeks ago. That's the 104.25 is a 50%. And this is the box we've been in, right? For that whole couple of
Hmm.
years. And we're well below 108, well below the lower trend line, the triangle line. So a lot can happen here. So we're watching the daily because the weekly has a lot of leeway here, unless we take out 104. So we'll watch the daily. We'll see what happens. But long as, like we've always talked about, long as it's below 108, it's super weak. In this case, what happened was we got to the 108. I mean, we got to the 50%. So at that point, we had to hit the brakes and wait for it to,
Hmm.
consolidate and
And
mhm,
and
go
the
ahead.
weekly gives you a good perspective too. You can see just based on the last 2, 3 weeks, works it's coiling up, right? Triangulating.
Yeah.
That's why it always helps to like step back and look at the weekly monthlies because it gives you sort of the bigger picture.
exactly, exactly. And the bigger picture tells us, yeah, it was a nice ride, but now we have to wait a little bit
Yeah.
till we reload,
Yep.
as it
That's
were.
right. It's building up energy.
Mm-hmm. Let's take a quick look at the Hang Seng. We did pretty well. This square is working really reasonably well.
Yeah, it is.
We came down to this 19, let's say 19,200. That level held, and we were looking for a strength above 19,450, which we straddled that pretty well for a few days, and now we're starting to move higher. But really, we want to see this move, and then the next following counter trend to see where this is going. For now, this 2380 is really the level of resistance. So it's possible that we consolidate in here. Otherwise, if we can get above that, I think then there's more upside, especially after this nice correction. So
Hmm.
that's it. And the lows look good, but if we take out this 19,200, I think, look for all kinds of trouble at that point. But for now,
Yeah.
it really pushed down and saved itself. And this is a great example of also, breaking above, coming back to retest the level. So this is pretty good so far. The downtrend is still in force, but it did come and check the support level and spend quite a bit of time doing that. And so we'll see what happens from there. Are you going to look at natural gas week, or
Yes. Yeah.
you are?
Yep.
Okay. We don't have to look at that. That's
No.
all I have. Let me put it back to you, and we'll
Okay.
take a look at the NASDAQ, Bitcoin, coffee, and natural gas, right?
That's correct.
All right. And I hope my sound and the mic and the screen was okay. I just finished moving, and my normal setup is not in place yet. And I'm using a Bluetooth mic, and it felt like it was breaking up a little bit here and there. If it was, I apologize. It should be better by next week.
Yeah.
But you guys heard the gist of it, right? Most of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it came through.
All right, great. And if you guys like our work, you like the videos, and like the stuff we put out, just remember to like, share, and also subscribe, and maybe put the alerts, click on the alerts. That'd be great. All right, let me put it back to you. 21,675.
Yep. You can
And look,
see what happens when a good triangle breaks, right?
and look where the market is right now compared to the square. We're right there, man. We
You're
tapped it,
right there, right at the half square, tapping it,
and the
which is also the
ABCD.
ABCD. But look at
Mm-hmm.
this triangle. This is why we watch these consolidations
Mm-hmm.
closely.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Monday we broke it and boom, 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 boom.
Yep.
And the NQs this week have been much stronger than the S&P, which
Yes. Yes.
is not the has not been the case since July.
Yeah. Exactly.
So anyway, we if we go back, a month or so ago, remember we were talking about how important this 20,000 level was?
Mm-hmm.
Tested it, tested it, tested it, tested it for a whole week, tested it, and then we held, went up, and now we were trying to clear this 20,800. We got that
Mm-hmm.
done this week, broke out of the triangle, and here we are now at 21,675.
And higher lows and out of there.
Yeah, if we can't clear that, then these are the two important levels, right? 21,675, we got to get up on top of it, stay on top, then we open up the full square there. If
Mm-hmm.
not, then it's back, the pressure will be back down to 20,838, which we
Mm-hmm.
obviously have to hold.
Yep. Yep.
But for now, we got a quick this week half square move. That's what you like to see, right? You
Mm-hmm.
capture the level and then go to the next level, and then you have your battle here, and whoever captures it, we stay under. It's back to 20,800. We sit on top. We go up to the full square. Which, let's see, the full square is a little over 22. I think it's yeah, 22.5.
Mm-hmm.
That would be where we would go next. Let's take a look at the week. Weekly's saying something different. Weekly's like saying, okay, it's not didn't quite clear it this week because you can see part of this bar is below it, but we're
Yeah.
sure ending the week on a strong note.
Sure, they have cleared it towards the end of the week.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
2182 is the big number. Next week
Mm-hmm.
we need to stay on top of that. Um,
Mm-hmm.
being that we're at 20,600, 21,600, we got 600 points or so there of cushion. But if we stay on top of that, it's again pushing up to the full square here, which is kind of like those ES targets you were doing. This is up around 24,000. That would
Hmm.
be your next spot. So right now it's looking bullish.
Hmm.
Let's take a quick look at the monthly. Same story on the monthly. The low, this we're clearing 20,878. If we do, we're looking at the half square up here, which is
24.
yeah, 24,000. So a lot like ES, there is the potential for a big run up into these levels. We need
Hmm.
to see, we need to make sure that the lower supports hold. If you look at the daily, you can see that there's the battle there that can give us a marker right away as to whether, these 24,000 levels are most probable or unlikely if we can't get above that.
Hmm.
Anything to add here on NQs?
No, we're good. We're on track.
Let's go check out Bitcoin. Hit that 100,000 and everyone went bonkers.
Yep.
But look how well this thing's reacting. Look at where we're ending up here, right at this
Hmm.
half square, which is the 102,000.
Yep.
We're starting to get, you can see this move was just trending, right? Strong, 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 strong. Now we're starting to get this, which means we're coming to the end of this leg. I'm not saying it's, the high and Bitcoin's going to crash, but this is starting to get more like heart attack type EKG, type chart pattern as opposed to this, right?
Yep. Yep. Uh-huh.
That's when it's just ripping. And now we're getting this. So we just if you're still long or if you're thinking about going long, just be a little cautious. Make sure you buy it on pullbacks to the level.
Hmm.
I wouldn't be surprised if we finish up here somewhere and then come back to test this level here. That's
Well,
the
it
big
would be
level.
healthy in the long run. So,
Absolutely. And that's the big test, right? Come back, sit on top of this, then it just validates the whole move. You can't say it looks weak. It's not weak.
yep.
Here's something to look at
Hmm.
on Bitcoin Weekly.
108 weeks, is it? Yep.
Yep. And that's a good square, man.
Yeah, it's a great square. Yep.
You know?
No, no, that's a
So
good one.
so timing wise, you know,
Look at the reaction at the 72. We had a reaction at the 36.
mhm.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So it's resonating with this vibe. So again, does that mean we're going to crash? No. Could we just go chop around in here in a wide range? Probably. Could
Hmm.
we could we pull back to the 144, which is around 89,000? Sure.
Hmm.
It would still be bullish. Just a little timing. And then let's look at the monthly circle. We're completely up and out, which is good, right?
Yeah,
And if you look at the low so far this month, we're holding this half square.
quite well.
Yeah, so if we
Hmm.
hold that half square, 111 on a monthly basis would be the next target. So nothing bearish about that.
Hmm.
Anything you want to add on Bitcoin?
No, we're good.
Yep,
Looking good.
there's the daily. All right, let's talk about the commodities and then
It's
go
never going to
go.
end, Ben. It can only go up.
It feels that way, doesn't it? And
Well,
it
that's the
has
talk, right? That's the
it.
talk. So I'm always curious
Well,
when
yeah, and when I
everybody's,
hear that talk, if you've been trading long enough, it just reminds me of like March, April of 2000.
Mhm.
Remember when the tech stocks and the internet stocks were going crazy,
Oh yeah, yeah.
and everybody was like, "Oh, these things are going to go forever," and blah, blah. And they went on for a little while longer, but
Hmm.
we know how it had to cleanse that sort of sentiment ultimately.
But this time
Um,
is different, Ben.
Four most dangerous words in the world, right?
Yep.
Uh, let's see. Let's talk about the commodities.
Yeah.
The grains are going sideways. They're not making new lows or they're not turning bearish. They're just not ready to go yet. So,
Mhm.
we're watching them like wheat is sideways, corn is in a sloppy uptrend, beans are sideways. So we'll keep watching those.
Mhm.
Sugar, uh, 4 hour completed an ABCD down. The daily did a 45 by 45, just waiting to see if we can get some monthly or monthly or weekly support there. and a little
Mm-hmm.
daily momentum to kick in. Cotton
Mm-hmm.
is sideways. Cocoa is potentially coming up to make a lower high. I'm very, very cognizant of that and watching it after we had that huge move up last year, early last
Mm-hmm.
year, or early
Mm-hmm.
this year. So we want to see what's how that manifests itself. But coffee looks interesting, and I want to show you a few things on coffee. So a couple of interesting things here. First on the daily, these commodities, when you find good squares, this is just sort of a sidebar. They really
Mm-hmm.
work well because
Mm-hmm.
right here we did 144 by 144 from the May lows, right here
Right.
from this low here.
Mm-hmm.
144 by 144. And look at the reaction you got off that.
Yeah.
And so remember how we were talking about Bitcoin, how you had this kind of move, and now you're sort of getting this
Mm-hmm.
EKG heart attack. It seems like the same thing here, right? Like this was your major, third wave you love to catch, and now we're getting a little more choppy action. Not that it's
Yeah.
bearish, maybe we got to chop around for a little while.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that's where we are. If you could see how steep that was. Here's your one by one. Here's your one by two.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Look how well it's holding the one by two still.
Yeah. Very
So this
strong.
thing can push up. I think we could have one more strong leg up. You know,
Mm-hmm.
now that if as long as we can clear this 327, 350 is the next target. And then after 350, it'll be the full square, which is 373.
Mm-hmm.
So we got to watch that. But the daily here looks really good. Watch and see if we can clear this full square. Then we know we've got the green light to go up. If we keep chopping around back in here, you're probably best to step aside
Mm-hmm.
because you'll get chopped up.
Yep.
Let's take a look at the weekly. The interesting thing on the weekly is here we did a low to high of 90 weeks. I
Mm-hmm.
said, okay, if this was the launching point for this leg and we do 90, where do we go? We go to July of next year.
Mm-hmm.
So that could be, we chop around and then make a spike high then. The other thing I wanted to show you is that we did have a square at that high, a nice 60 week, which
Mm-hmm.
is a little over a year, but it was a nice move into that high. So
Mm-hmm.
again, it may just be that we don't go down, but we chop around here. So a little
Right.
little bit of
Right.
caution from that standpoint. It may be a little more choppy ride than we saw here the last three or
Mm-hmm.
4 months.
Mm-hmm.
Let's take a look at the monthly. And the monthly's showing a nice picture. Listen, on the monthly basis, as long as we're above here, which is right around 310, 309, it's bullish, right? We could even come down to this 283 and it's still bullish because we would be consolidating at a place of previous highs.
Mm-hmm.
And remember what did that for a while? Gold.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's how these commodities work. Also, 30 weeks, you see this, I'm sorry, 30 months, you see this likes to do 30s.
Yep.
30 months will put us into July, just like the weekly,
Mm.
which is a 60 week. So that's coffee. Anything you want to add on coffee?
Well, it looks good. Looks like it's about to, run because we don't really have any big squares at the high. So we'll
There's
have to
there's more
watch.
to go.
Yeah, looks
It's
like.
just it's just going to be a little more choppy, I think.
Well, potential for a triangle here, consolidate a little bit. So,
A lot like gold,
mm-hmm.
So watch it, but it still looks bullish. Let's check out Nat Gas. And I took the squares off the daily because I just wanted to show you these levels clearly.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's great.
So here we did, I was looking to see, okay, what have we done in here? We did a nice clean ABCD into that high, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But I looked at, this has been a consolidation for, almost 2 years now.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of drew in some lines that you could sort of see where we are bouncing and where we were
Right.
getting stopped. So we got stopped at the high here, which was the ABCD. and we've pulled right back to this level that has been pretty resonant when price came near it.
Mm-hmm.
And we're holding it so far, right?
Right,
As
right.
long as we hold this level, I think it can give us the move to the okay, we did the ABCD, we've pulled back. Now let's go up and test this again and see if we can get on top of that. That's
Mm-hmm.
really the key to launching that gas is we got to hold this sort of mid-level and then clear out this resistance that's on top of this channel. Obviously, if we lose this, we could be heading back down to the bottom of the channel. And we could also put in a higher low in doing that.
Right.
So all in
Mm-hmm.
all, it looks like here's your channels and way of defining this bottom that's being put in. And now we just got to watch the levels and good spots where we can get in with a good risk reward ratio now to see
Mm-hmm.
when we capture this sort of big breakout and the move out. And when you look
Mm-hmm.
at the weekly and the monthly, you can get a good perspective on what it's doing. We had this big triangle,
Mm-hmm.
broke out of the triangle, almost made it up to the full square of 371. Now we're pulling back. Most likely we're coming back to give this a kiss and a test, the top of the triangle,
Mm-hmm.
which is a pretty common pattern with triangles, right? They come back and test the breakout. If the breakout holds, then they really get going.
Right, right.
Here we get to late 2025 if we do a 90, low to high, like this is done, like here was low to high was 90.
Mm-hmm.
Let's look at the monthly. Monthly, same thing. Big break out of this triangle. So far, we're inside bar for the month, but I wouldn't be surprised if we come back and test that triangle like 278 area.
Mm-hmm.
And if we can hold it and not go back into it, then we could really launch and get up to this 488. And here you can see the visual of where the top of that band has been that we've been trading, the
Right.
resistance,
Mm-hmm.
that 360 area. If we do 90 low to high, it means the bull market runs a little longer into 2027 potentially in natural gas. Right?
Mm-hmm.
First peak, pull back, next peak. It's just like here. First peak, pull back, next peak. And that would be the 90. So that's nat gas. Anything you want to add on natural gas?
Well, yeah, I think the lows are in. I mean, the last few months, we talk about natural gas often,
Mhm.
and I remember looking at the monthly charts, and it looks like, these are the slow motion lows. Well, sure looks like the lows are in. So it's just a matter of waiting for the timing for it to, really pick up some momentum.
Yeah, and the momentum kicks in when we break out of the top of this channel.
Yeah.
That's when you'll see people pile in.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see. We'll find the good setups and make sure you know about them. Let's now one of the last thing I want to do is take a look at a couple of these monthly circle charts I have because I like sharing those. People like those charts. Let's go to the first one, which is crude. Now this one's interesting to me, Barry, because the circle has kind of captured price and we could get this, sort of more of a speed move down and actually take out those lows and do that false break you want.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Prior to breaking. The other thing to notice is that, on a monthly basis, this bar so far, now it's early in the month, but we're fully below the 60, which is, the 7143, call it 7150 area.
Mm-hmm.
If we can't trade above that, then we print the whole bar there, that's going to put downward pressure on the price. So this to me is just something to watch again, given the setup that you're seeing, which is, we want to have some sort of false break here to create the move higher. This supports that in that the pressure is on a monthly basis is beginning to shift to the downside.
Right, right. And we could get a quick, fast move off of that
Hmm.
pattern too.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And then don't forget when the circle gives way, that generally gives, in this case, would be upside momentum. Just
Yep.
like here, when the circle gave way on the way up, you
Mm-hmm.
had the downside momentum.
Yep.
So it's one we'll follow. I'll keep showing it every so often, and we can check in, see how it's doing, and when it
Hmm.
stops working. And then the other one I wanted to show was for gold. And this is how when you catch these circles right, this is how they work, right?
Hmm.
I mean, look at this. This is 1, 2, 3 months now. We're capturing it here,
Yeah.
right? We pushed up, couldn't get out. Next month pushed up, couldn't get out. And here now we're inside and here's the big battle is at this half square, right? 2667. Again, the corollary is while it's stuck here, it's going to force, pressure is going to be to the downside. It's going to keep pushing it down like a beach ball underwater. And then once it
Hmm.
gets out, boom, then
Yep.
you can get the next move higher.
Hmm.
So I like them. I like, I know you like the circle charts and they just give you a different view and a different perspective on what could be going on in a market.
Yep.
Um, from a topic today, Barry, what's top of mind for you right now? We're in this sort of, it feels like again like a slack tide, like
Hmm.
and what do you do mentally when you're in this sort of position where you see things that are extended, but they're still bullish. So you can't short because you're just going to get run over until the technicals give you that green light.
Hmm. I think you started out the podcast with the right line. It's about, grabbing the tiger by the tail. When
Hmm.
that's sort of like a runaway market, when they get going, what do you do? Well, you just continue to trade. I think, have you heard anything negative about the market lately?
Not really.
Not really, right? I haven't. And the only thing I've been noticing is, and I know you have, and you're sharing some of that with me, just keep an eye on the sentiment numbers, how they're looking. And while it's starting to build up, and in some of these things are really pegging the red lines, right? The
Yeah.
sentiment side. So I think, well, from a technical side, so, anytime we have an extended run, it's always the same thing. Sentiment gets overloaded. Everybody else has to wait until something happens. And of course, the last minute is a bunch of people holding the bag if we
Right.
do when we do get a decent downturn. But I think from a trading perspective, and using the squares and the levels that we talk about and the way we read the market, we really have to wait till some of these key levels get taken out till we reach a key resistant level and it holds
Right.
and it squares, and then we look for it's the same sort of the rinse and repeat. We wait for it to hit the target. We look to see how it responds, reacts, and then you take the next leg off of that, and the next leg, the next section, right? So you can call it next section, next leg, and it could be another section up. It could be a corrective leg. So however it happens, we'll deal with that. But for now, what we're dealing with is we did spend some time looking for these lower highs and higher lows and potential fall breaks. And we do that when there's a big, potentially big square or cycle that that came in at a high. Do you have a handy NASDAQ chart?
Yeah, sure.
Um,
Daily.
yeah, that's fine. So just looking at the NASDAQ, you can see, once the July high came in, we were looking for that. Cycles came in, and you can see what the reaction was, right? We had a great move down.
Yeah.
And then we have a lower high that came in August, another pullback. But then that low in August, September made a higher low compared to the
Hmm.
July low.
Hmm.
And then, we broke to the upside. Then it was just up, and grinding. S&P, all the markets did it in different ways. But now, because we were really looking at the July high and different highs for the S&P, so we were waiting for it to see which way, if it's going to have a continuation move or if we're going to trade lower, turn lower. So it turns out now the markets are on top of these levels, and so far we're trading it that way, and we'll wait for these next levels to get hit. Now Nasdaq, of course, is hitting right at the level. I mean, look at the
Hmm.
close is going to be right there,
Right on it.
21, 21,675. But the funny thing is, it's always, to me, it's always some kind of a mashup. It's never super clean. It's hardly when it's super clean.
Hmm.
So here we do have some really important cycles that are hitting. And I always feel like there's a surprise, black swan, not a crash, but a black swan in terms of some kind of a correction starting from a minor, with a minor square or minor cycle. And that can happen, I don't have time to go into examples, but it's happened in the past. So I would say when you get past a certain level, you still need to obviously take your signals and trade the trend. But now you want to really keep your sort of the high beams on and look at road ahead and see what's there. And this today, what we talked about was all the levels that are above. So we're watching those levels to see if we reach them. How is the market responding to those, reacting to those levels? And we're
Hmm.
also watching out behind to see how the market is behaving around support levels. So we talked
Right.
about both. We talk about both every time. We talk about the support levels that we have to hold all the way down at 30 minutes. And then we talk about resistance levels at weekly level to daily level. And
Hmm.
I think between the two, the thing to do is you just watch the market. It's always the technicals. We can have all kinds of forecasts and, you know, cycles and squares and everything else, but a bull market will go through all of that till it's finally done. But just because it's trending doesn't mean we should ignore anything. No, we're always doing the same thing we've been doing in the podcast forever, and not forever, about 4 years, is it? and
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
feels like forever, long time.
Right. Right.
It's a big commitment, right? Do it weekly for 4 years.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever committed to anything that much for that long.
Right.
uh, so anything educational anyway, like around the market. So anyway, I think the key is here. I think we're clearly there's a big cycle building up here. You can see by the weekly charts we looked at, with that big uh, curve that we're following to the upside,
Hmm.
and the weekly squares that I know there's some squares coming up. We didn't have time to get into those today, but maybe before the end of the year show we'll cover that. So there are some really, really important ones coming up. Not today, not tomorrow. I think it's close to the end of the year, early next year. And the middle of the month, we have some things. So I think, until the market says otherwise, which and otherwise to us means it takes out some of the key levels that we use for support. We continue to trade and you continue to trade the trades in that direction. So
Hmm.
that's what we do.
Absolutely. So the key thing, and is what we always talk about, is know the important levels, and then how price reacts to it dictates your bias, right? If it gets on top of an important level, it's bullish. If it
Hmm.
gets stuck under it, it's bearish. And if you can do that and remain flexible, you won't be shorting into the highs, and you won't be, trying to catch knives as it's falling. And that's the thing where you don't want to get
Absolutely.
hurt.
Yeah, and this reaction is what we want to watch. And like this ABCD here, we want to watch this level, see what happens. And especially if it breaks through it, that means we could really melt up.
Yeah. Yeah.
That option is also there.
Yep.
But next week we'll do a little bit of a deeper dive and look at the bigger picture a little bit closer because this week's a little bit of a rush for me. But we'll spend some
Yes.
more time next week, and I think it'll be great.
I'll run the monthlies next week, and then we can have that sort of 10,000 foot view.
Hmm. Sounds very
So
good.
listen, we appreciate your support. We're in December, believe it or not. There's less than a month left in the year. We appreciate all the support in the channel this year, subscribing and hitting the bells for the alerts and passing the links around and liking the videos. That's helped a lot. Please keep doing that. And everybody have a good weekend, and we'll talk to you next week.
All right. Good job. And we'll talk to you next week. All
All right. Take care,
right.
Barry. Get those
Bye-bye.
boxes unpacked.
Yeah, I'm working on it. All right.
See you later.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks.